It's a video too. I got all the way up to Norbury, and she texted me and said to me that in no way can she be there, and that she'd suddenly been invited to spend New Year in with her family, and she dropped me in the middle of London with the twins. She was, turns out, a bit of a bitch, really. Anyway, I found somewhere to stay, and then she called me over on the 5th. She let me stay the night. She said we could stay for a month. She drew out all rules for the twins to abide by, and she gave us hope. And then the next day she told me I had to be out by 12 and that I could go to Croydon on the 6th. So basically, I'd forgiven her once. I weren't going to keep forgiving her, but because I couldn't carry on my stuff, I couldn't really say a lot. So I went there on the 6th, and they gave me an accommodation at 57 Friends Road. 57 also being a prior number where I'd lived in Coventry, where there'd been abuse of attacks and targets on one of my children many years ago. But all this is just coincidence. But how many coincidences can you have in 1 year? Anyway, I'll let you decide this for yourself. So we got the twins straight into school at Park Hill Primary School. I met Carol and Rebecca. They were lovely. In there happened to be 2 people from Coventry, one from Smith Street, in fact, called Sonia. And I really liked Sonia. And her children suffered severely. They were so neglected, and the bedding was so black because Sonia was so depressed after the baby because of the standard of living that she was in. We also discovered that the water that she'd been feeding her baby with was absolutely disgusting and making people ill. That I just bought bottled water for me and the girls to drink in the end. And, I had such severe bad stomach after everything, and my stomach was up like a balloon. Basically, I went to... I stayed in my room there. I worked as much as I could. I took the kids to school repeatedly. They started swearing. I'd never heard my twins swear in their life. Carol was lovely, great fun, and basically the paperwork I wrote with Croydon Council about the head injury, apparently it wasn't on the system at the time in Coventry, so they said that there was no head injury, no assault reported at the courthouse pub or anything. So basically what had happened there was a mix-up, but luckily I'd taken photos of the crime number and the paperwork and emailed it to myself because I didn't want to be carrying loads of paperwork and stuff, which in the end, paperwork became quite important to me by the end of this year. Anyway, so basically what I did was I went to Croydon Council. I pulled out the emails. I said, there's the proof. Look, I had a severe head injury. That's why I'm getting concussion. I was having 2 or 3 days out of the month where I couldn't actually think straight. People were telling me stuff, but it wasn't registering until 3 days later. It was a bit delayed, That was happening for 2 or 3 days a month. I did speak to Dr. Knezra at the time at the Friends Road surgery, and I had no idea that was an NHS hospital or anything like that at the time. It wasn't until suddenly I found extra cameras in there later on and somebody mentioned to me that it was under the NHS, and I thought, well, it's fine, all I need to do is find somewhere. And I was still absolutely in turmoil about Stevie, and I couldn't get through to call her or speak to her or anything, and every time she bought a new phone, somebody broke it the next day, and she was repeatedly struggling, and there was no contact hardly between me and her. It was all monitored contact. Basically, my oldest daughter and I don't really get on very much because her boyfriend's quite aggressive, and I don't want that around my grandkids, so we don't get on for that reason. And he had told her to go to the police station, say he was concerned about me and stuff, and although I hadn't spoken to her for a long time, and she didn't understand the severity of the situation. She hated Stevie anyway, and all that crap anyway, which isn't important right now. So basically, I ended up staying at Croydon. I fought it, and I had no intentions of coming to Coventry at that time, simply because I wanted Stevie out there. Which turned out to be a battle between me and the mental health services this year, and they kept in the middle of us, and they pursued us, and they caused us so many problems this year you would not believe. I was repeatedly targeted for the twins, and in the end they managed to get those. And we'll get to that later. Anyway, Croydon Council decided that they couldn't continue with the accommodation, and threw me and the twins onto the streets. I had nowhere to go. I didn't know what to do. There's no way I was going to return back to here at the time, because I wanted Stevie out of there. I knew that they'd been seriously negligent and had every intention of keep getting in the way, hence why they opened a case for the social services, and they pursued me, etc. So basically I went to view about 4 properties a week, and not one of them were any good. They were like full of rat crap and really dodgy accommodations. I mean, I was so desperate to get a house for Stevie that I was almost tempted to take some of those. Unfortunately, I never got any properties, and the one that I was offered, I was asked to pay £400, and they'd create dodgy paperwork saying I earn $18,000 a year and stuff like that, just to give to the landlord so I could get the property. I wasn't prepared to do that because I didn't want any fraud problems on my case, or the taxman after me, simply because I don't want to break the law or rob from anybody. And I certainly did need to get a house, and it was everything I wanted. It was fully furnished, and it was a beautiful house, but simply I wasn't prepared to take that risk. Because it only takes one person to pick up the phone, and because so many had already done that, and, you know, I didn't want to do it, basically. So I never got a property. I was thrown onto the streets with my kids. Croydon apparently closed their case with me. There was nothing more to do with me. The morning I was leaving, I was devastated. I didn't know where to go, who to turn to. I couldn't get hold of Stevie. She was never calling me back and stuff, and I was seriously worried about her. And basically what happened was, the morning I had to leave, I realised all the paperwork from Croydon Council and all the housing benefit papers had repeatedly produced again, which you have to do when you make a new claim somewhere else. And pretty much everything we had to prove our ID, apart from 1 or 2 copies of birth certificates and stuff for the kids, and that was still there because I had them separate. But loads of designs I did for inventions and stuff like that was all gone. So, a few book notes which I'd written, because I'd always intended to write the book, and every now and again I used to just get ideas and write stuff about sent to coventry and stuff. And basically all the paperwork was gone. The remains of my business, even the last photo album of me and my children and my family was taken. My staple guns for my frame of my canvases, etc. and all that, but luckily I still had a lot of other stuff, you know. The whole situation was a mess. I was devastated, and from this point I thought, how can I get the girls, keep them going to school, you know? This is increasingly difficult. So what I did was I sold the TV we had at Croydon, cash converters, and I bought camping equipment. I was sent from the library to a place called Godstone, where this was the start of my pursuit of absolute hell and danger this year. Because I'd suffered the head injury, all the stress from my daughter, the concerns about her health, the lack of being able to contact her, and been thrown on the streets by the council and with my children, and which I found out later is pretty much illegal, because I'd never been in this situation before, I didn't know that I could have gone in and said, well, actually, I've got nowhere to go, you have to help me out. So anyway, I got sent from the library to, the lady walked out and she said that it was the only campsite available, so I went there. They sent me to this pub where there was some hot food available for me and the children, where I met this man called David Hooker. He was a lovely guy. He looked like an older version of Harry Potter. Anyway, he introduced himself as Harry Potter, which was kind of cool because I was actually thinking he looks a bit like him. Anyhow, he happened to need somebody at the house that does IT and web design, and I'll be back in a minute.